Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. People like me, Michelle Kane with Voice Matters LLC, and my fabulous co host Karen Swim, who keeps us all in line over at Solo PR Pro, keeps us inspired, motivated, and informed. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. It's so good to be back. Thank you.
Yes.
I feel like our countdown this morning feels a little bit like I do. You're there, but you're sputtering kind of. You're trying to make it work.
I feel that. I feel that. I know. September was bizarre on so many levels.
Yeah,
And so, we're kind of in October and like we were talking before we started, it's still kind of a weird month. It feels like, well, let me kick it off with our topic today, which is going to be, are we there yet? Are we there
yeah,
yet? Are
yeah,
we through all the things? And of course, yeah, we're not. We're not, but we're still here and we are still upright and we are still doing the work, even though in a lot of ways the work is a lot more challenging.
yeah,
I feel like it's whether you're pitching or even promoting events, it's really tough to get people's full attention and to get on the radar. And I know I'm guilty of that too as a participant or member of a target audience. It's like, what? When?
yeah. I I hate to use the word unprecedented, but how about for me personally, in my lifetime, I've never worked in an environment where an event really impacted the entire world and
Yeah.
every human being in it. And the ripple effect of the pandemic is that we have labor shortages, we have supply shortages, we have worker burnout because of the shortages and the pandemic and all of the things that happen. So we're seeing things like women still being impacted by lack of childcare.
Yeah.
And so they're having to drop out. Even solos are having to, drop out of the workforce because they don't have childcare. We're seeing, hours being impacted by the pandemic because you're fighting two things. Now you're fighting, if you have a positive worker, then you now are down another staff member when you're already short. Nobody across the board seems to be able to find enough talent to fulfill the roles. And so everybody's feeling overwhelmed. So when I think about all of these things in the world that have happened, they're happening to our clients. And if they're happening to our clients, it's impacting our work. And that's making
Right.
things very, very difficult for all of us. Not to mention, we are all stressed and overdue for a big fat break. I mean,
Yeah.
I wish that 2022 was going to be the year of the great reset where somebody would just pay us all to go away on it to an island and recover from all of this.
Yeah.
But so we're not there yet.
No.
That was a long answer.
We're still recalculating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Richard Branson should, start slotting weeks at his island that we can all go hang out. I think that would be a great public service on his part.
It would be a tremendous, while everybody's sending everybody to space, I can't afford to buy one of those tickets, but I
No.
will gladly take a tropical vacation. At this point, I would be happy to go one state over and
Yeah.
just be gone and off the grid for even a week. That would be
Yes.
lovely. So
Exactly.
if he wants to send me and my fur baby on a retreat, we'll take it.
Just wanna hole up in a hotel for a couple of days. No big deal. No big
I'm
deal.
telling you, it's but the interesting thing for, us as communicators and as, PR is that we have two challenges. It's preserving our own mental health and
Yeah.
sanity in this environment, but we also have to continue to deliver results in
Right.
this environment. And that means that we're trying to break through to our audiences who are dealing with all of these things as well, and their
Right.
attention may be segmented or just not there at all. Um, from meeting people, outreach has become much more difficult because they're overwhelmed too. They're facing all of the same challenges that we're facing. And then I think that we've all seen that in addition to all of the big world things that keep happening and all of the disasters, life keeps happening too.
Yeah.
And it seems to be happening at a much faster pace.
Yeah.
So, everyone is it's like we're all walking around with this, 100-pound weight on our shoulders, trying hard to keep moving forward. And then another, weight is laid on top of us and it's crushing us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what
And
do you do? Like how are you surviving in this crazy environment?
I normally, well, not that I'm not still, I'm usually the harshest person on myself. So I try to cut myself some slack. And if that means not every morning, but if some mornings, if I need to sleep until 8 a.m., I sleep until 8 a.m. If that makes me a fresher person. Um, also, you know, just try to, always be looking at things from an original perspective, if that makes sense, because nothing's really normal right now, right? So, if the tried and true isn't working, try a different approach, or, you know, try and, yeah, because as we were saying, getting people's attention is so difficult right now. And I think being honest about that and forthright about that. Sometimes I like to present things in that way of like, hey, look, we know we are all in a long slog. We are not through this yet, even though we might get up and go about our day as if it's normal. There's still nothing really normal about our world. So, in light of that, have some fun, come to our events or something like that. But I think just keeping that perspective in mind, because it is so easy when you're hunkered down at your workstation or in the day to day of what you're doing. It's easy to think everything's, well, I'm sitting here, I got my cup of coffee, everything's fine. But we're still all, engaging with this new territory, and it changes by the day.
Yeah.
And the same things we're dealing with, a year ago we're dealing with, and I know, we're all tired at a certain level about it. Mask, no mask. I'm like, I'm just going to do my best to protect myself. I don't know what to tell you. I can't.
Yeah. Ugh.
Um, and,
I
and
mean,
yeah,
you're on such a couple of really key points, and the things that I have really been trying to keep in mind. One is grace for
yes,
yourself and grace for other people. Realizing that, a big aha moment for me in September, which was just a horrible month, was at
yeah,
the end of the month realizing that I needed to quit beating up on myself for not being able to do
yes,
XYZ like I used to do it.
yeah,
Well, you have to operate in the now. And so giving yourself permission to understand that your circumstances are not the same as they were a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, but in the now, what do you need to set up to survive and succeed? That
mm-hmm,
that was a really important shift for me to say, okay, forget about, stop comparing yourself to your past self and deal with where you are in this present moment and the things that you have to deal with in this moment and build around that. So, extending that grace to yourself to be different. And that's okay. Maybe I cannot work, as many hours per week as I used to. Maybe I cannot handle as many incoming things. So decrease them. It's
yeah,
okay. Do what you have to do. Another thing that you mentioned was, systems.
mm,
Create a structure and a system for yourself,
mm-hmm,
again, for the present. One of the saving graces that I think for all of us is to make sure that you have a plan. And when you have documented plans, you should also have contingency plans because there's so many things that are in flux these days. We live in this very fluid environment. So you need to sort of have these parallel tracks
right,
going to plan for all of the contingencies. Obviously this is super obvious to people who work with events like yourself, that for live event planning you definitely have to have backup plans, but it really applies across the board because
yeah,
remember that you may be planning a specific thing for a client, but they're dealing with labor shortages,
Right.
or maybe they're planning on closing funding, but things are moving a lot slower than they used to move because of all of the things in the world that are going on. So just realize that whatever your plans are, that you definitely need to have contingencies, talk about them with your clients, work out these scenarios. We have that means that we have to be more diligent about our planning process. We have to ask more questions, and we have to set realistic expectations with the clients.
Exactly.
For example, if you're doing funding announcements, you need a long runway for pre-pitching these reporters that cover funding because they are inundated. So it used to be that maybe you could get away with a 2-week window. I would say if you really want a reporter to cover something, you give them a month to 6 weeks. Not kidding. Personal experience recently, give them as long of a runway as you can. Even if the funding hasn't closed, especially if you're seeking out an exclusive, you can always reach out and say, I wanted to give you a heads up, would love to offer this exclusive to you. We're not closed. I'll keep you in the loop, but you need to get it on their radar and calendar
Right.
way in advance.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, grace and planning are two big things, and then systems, having a system and
Mhm.
a structure.
Yeah, I think what you said is key. It's always about managing expectations, and that can change moment to moment, you know? It's like, "Well, we thought this would be this way," and yeah, and remember, because I think especially as solos, we are hard on ourselves because we expect so much from ourselves because it's definitely a certain personality type that does this, work this way. Um, yeah, I mean, all of our clients are dealing with you know, inventory issues, being able to get parts. In my world, I work with dealerships and, waiting on parts and trying to serve the customers well. And I think if we all just need to keep a certain level of understanding of, because let's face it, a lot of us, and myself included, we all lived life in the drive-through lane. I can just drive through and get what I need in 3 minutes all across the board. I can get that, and I can get that, and I can do that. Now it's like, can we?
Yeah.
Especially related to, like, live events, even the things that we needed for it. I was very fortunate, but I had in the back of my mind, I better order this now because I don't know where they get their supplies from. I don't wanna be left, empty-handed at the end of the day, and I just think it is so important that we all really focus on taking care of ourselves during this time. I know we've said that so often, and it's easy to be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever," and I get it, because sometimes by the time you take care of everything around you and then the people around you, it's, maybe like 9 o'clock, and you just wanna fall into the couch. Hello. Some days that's me. Um, you still need to carve out that time because it will catch up. It will catch up with you,
Yeah.
and
There
so
was a there was a tip recently that really resonated with me from Jordan Rayner, and he
mm,
talked about he talked about, those earworms. You hear a piece of a song and it plays and plays and plays. And he said that's because, and there's some science to back this up, it's an open loop. It's not
mm,
completed. So it keeps running through. And the reason it's usually an open loop is because you hear a piece of it, maybe through a commercial or a segment, or maybe it's a song that you turn off because you don't like it. So you never complete it. So your brain keeps rerunning it. Well, we could do the same thing with our to-do list where it's an open
yes.
running. Well, that causes a lot of stress and takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
So, even before I heard this, last week, I was just like overwhelmed and feeling crazy. So I didn't have any of those big post-it notes, but I found a big piece of paper and I wrote down everything that I needed to do on this huge piece of paper and I taped it to my wall. Getting it out of that loop that was playing and
yeah,
onto paper where I could look at it immediately reduced my stress level. And then I had something in front of me that now I could plan around like, okay, I have this, it's going to take this amount of time, but let's break that down.
yeah,
Um, so I highly recommend looking at, I am a digital girl, so I have all kinds of digital systems, but that big old piece of paper, to get it all out of my brain so that it
Yeah.
wasn't rolling around in there was one of the best things that I ever did. So, see if that tip might work for you. It doesn't have to be a big old piece of paper. It could be a notebook, but
Mhm.
or it could be, a type list, whatever your jam is. But I promise you, just somehow dumping it all somewhere else in a central location so that it's not all over the place was super helpful to me. And one of the things that allowed me to go into this week with a lot less stress and anxiety about the stuff that was happening.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's nothing like a good old brain dump. And,
That felt good. It was like
it's
cleaning out the pipe.
detox my head, and it's funny 'cause I don't catch myself at this as often as I should, and I really need to work on it. Because so many times, even when I do make those to-do lists, I'm like, "Come on, you gotta get this done. Because if you don't get this done, duh, 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 duh," and every once in a while, I'll stop myself and say, "Who other than me is screaming for this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, if this doesn't happen today, it can happen tomorrow, and that's okay." It's yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
we become our worst enemies just as like, "Let's go, 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 go. Get this done." And of course, we want to feel that sense of accomplishment. You want to be able to move on to the next thing because, the pendulum swinging the other way is, "Ugh, it's this one easy task. Why am I not getting it done? It's just hanging around." And I know a clean slate leaves room for more opportunities, blah, blah, blah. But, try and find that lovely middle ground where you're not being such a taskmaster on yourself and not, and also it's just that mental grind in your head takes up a lot of energy as
Yeah.
opposed to, okay, I'm going to do this thing. Great. Okay, what's next? Even
I
saying
love
that
that.
makes me feel
Yeah.
better.
I would also say, another source of anxiety can be, bucking up and getting it done. Um, One of my own personal pet peeves and frustrations, and I also can struggle with this, is people who don't communicate that they're struggling.
Mm,
Um, that's always bothered me, even when I was, in management in corporate America. I would encourage my team members to speak up, like, don't just do things, don't
yeah,
work extra hours to make things happen. Because if you do that, then I'm never aware of the problem and I can't fight for you. I can't fix it.
right.
We feel more strongly about that as a solo. And it saddens me in a way that we have created this work model where people are afraid to be vulnerable. You are a whole person with a whole life. Sometimes things happen. You're not at your best. You're not feeling well. Maybe it's just mental fatigue. But if you don't speak up, then you really are letting other people down because you're really
Mhm,
not at your best. You're not handling things, but you're not
right.
communicating with people. So, what does that mean as a solo? It means that if you're working with other team members, you need to speak up if you're struggling. If you don't feel well, tell your team, hey, I'm
Mhm,
not feeling well. I'm not at my best. You know, can you help me? If
yeah.
and even if you don't have other team members and you're struggling, speak up. That's why
Mhm,
we have communities like Solo PR Pro, which is a very safe place to be
mhm,
vulnerable and to let people know that you're struggling. Maybe you need an extra hand for a little while to help you out because you just can't, and that's okay. But I would also say, don't buck up when bad things are happening to you because your clients will notice that something is off.
yeah,
They will. You think you're hiding it, you think you're carrying the load. If you're sick, tell them you're sick
yeah.
and make a plan. Hey, I'm not feeling well and I'm going to need to, kind of lighten the load for the next few days, or I'm going to have to take off a few days so I can recover. Here's the plan. Here's how I'm going to handle things.
Mhm,
They're human beings too. They're struggling with all of the same things that you're struggling with as well. And I don't think that we can ever fix this broken work system if we just continue to be a part of the problem. So I'm
true.
super big on challenging the system. I made a radical, it doesn't feel really radical, but I made a radical move as I was onboarding new clients in September. I did not put them on a regular meeting schedule, but I
Nice.
communicated the whys of this is why we don't do this. What I do is we Slack all day long if we need to, you know, hit the Slack button to do a quick video call to chat about something, we do that. And, maybe monthly-ish, we have a meeting.
Yeah.
It's like, let's touch base.
Yeah.
Not one client has said, that totally sucks. I did that because when I looked at how I was spending my time, I can't be effective if I'm doing 11 hours of meetings every week just because some PR person 22 years ago said that if the client is this size, you have to meet with them weekly or you
Right.
have to meet with them bi-week. That's stupid.
Yeah.
All of this communication at our fingertips. We can tag in when we need to. And
Yeah.
that definitely reduced my stress level because I'm able to look at my week and I have time to work.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still completely overwhelmed. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the season of total like this job is hard. I'm
Yeah.
having a hard time like staffing things, but whatever, that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But it's not extra added stress. And at
Right.
least I have blocks of time, big, huge chunks of time, whole days of time where I can
Yeah.
just focus.
Yeah. And I finally come into that acceptance, that wait a second, I deserve to have margins too. I deserve to have that thinking time. And I not only do I deserve it, I need it to
Yeah.
serve my clients well. So yeah, that's one of my little projects that I'm working on. If you're watching us on YouTube, if only you could see what I am looking at with the events I've had the past couple of months. It looks like a bomb went off and I'm crazed about it, but I'm like, all right, we'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, talking about like communication with your clients, I'll be fully transparent. I didn't take I'm not even going to say this out loud, a proper vacation in like 11 years. So I went to the Jersey Shore and all I got was a case of the Rona, not even a nice t-shirt. But, I knew it's like I tried to hobble through. Thankfully, it was a mild case. It's still annoying as anything and, scary when you read about what could happen. Um, but yeah, I had to be transparent with my clients. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be popping into the office for a couple of weeks. You're not going to see me. And I'm going to do my best to serve you well. But just know I'm muddling through because I know the ship has to keep sailing, and I'm grateful that I'm able to do it. But it just might be at a lower gear. And like you said, all of them were like, "Are you okay? Take it easy. Don't blah blah blah." I'm like, "No, no, no. I need to, So yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, thankfully, if as solos we're
Yeah. In
yeah.
typical solo fashion, Michelle was the person that was like, "I'm in bed. I'm looking at my laptop." And she a few weeks ago, she's like, "I think I can do the podcast." I'm like, "No. No, actually, you cannot. It will be fine. We will take a break, and you'll
And,
get."
and in typical Michelle fashion, I get not one new puppy, two new
Yeah.
puppies.
It's like,
Because
so
why
I'm
not?
through infection and I feel like I'm dying most hours of the day, but I'm gonna just go and adopt 2 new puppies. How about that?
And stubbornly getting weekly COVID tests. I'm like, I want to be negative. Let's go. Let's go. I did learn that I am apparently very impatient.
Yes, you are, and that is typical. So we just wanna check this thing off like, "Okay, got sick. Um, let's get this
Next.
on our schedule as quickly as possible." So, dear
Anyway,
friends, our listening audience, whether you're listening live or several days, months, weeks later, please, all I can say is don't be like Michelle.
true. It's true. Don't do as I say, not well, rarely as I do. I'll get that press release out. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it recently and it's I don't know if this is a good thing or not. I have not become someone that is not compassionate, but I certainly through this pandemic have had to learn how to care less. I
Yeah.
really have
Yeah.
because
Because it'll bring you down if you
break
have.
it
Yeah.
will kill you. It will send you to your bed unable to
Yeah.
get up. So
Yeah.
things happen and I've just had to say, all right, well, keep it moving.
Yeah.
I had something happen last week that made me want to burst into tears, and I'm like, Yeah, I won't be doing that. Just whatever.
Ugh.
Because, people will disappoint you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It will
Yeah.
happen more
Yes, they
often
will.
than you'd like it to, but you can't focus on that. You just gotta keep your eyes on the end goal and keep it moving, and if you
Yeah.
start to internalize all of these glitches and things that go wrong and people that let you down, you're gonna kill yourself, and,
Yeah.
it's not good. So you just, care a little less.
Yeah. And I commend you on that because it's easier said than done because we put we don't I don't think we realize how much of ourselves we put in to our work. I mean, not in an unhealthy, personal,
Yeah,
invasive way, but you're invested in what you're doing because, you have to care to a certain extent. Much as I often say, like, I don't need to know everything, but I need to know everything. It's kind of like it's not that I don't care, but I can't care. Okay?
yeah, and I think it's about not
It's hard.
internalizing the glitch, the failure. It's
Yeah.
dealing with it and moving on.
Yeah.
You can't take all of this stuff personally or to heart. That's where you
Right.
really have to on your business hat and go, okay, well,
Yeah.
okay, so now how am I going to fix this
Yeah.
and keep moving? Because if you start to continue to say, oh my God, then you're not going to make it. And this job is there's a reason that it lands on the list of, stressful
Stress.
positions year after year after year because public relations is a stressful job and it
Mhm.
can be even more stressful if you allow it to. So you
Yeah.
cannot let this define who you are.
Yeah.
Bring your best self and do your best work, but the way that I am able to continue to show up for my clients and for myself is by not allowing this stuff that goes wrong to get into my inner being. And I have in the past, I have
Yeah.
gotten super depressed when something's not going well or take, people not moving in the same direction, very personal. I just can't do that.
Mhm.
I can't because I've got to survive too. And
Mhm.
so showing up for myself means that I just can't let stuff bother me. And yes, it takes some practice, but you get kicked enough, you learn how to get up pretty quickly.
Yeah. That is the truth, and it is freeing in a way, when you don't give as much of yourself to things that really don't require it.
Yes.
Someone in the past turned that light bulb on for me. It's like, "Well, why do you give so much of yourself?" And you're like, "Oh, I didn't know there was another way. Oh, I could do this and not that doesn't say I practice it as much as I should, but at least the nugget of information's in my head."
Behavioral change takes time.
It
So,
does, it
again,
does.
you have to give yourself grace just because you know a
Yeah,
thing in your head. You have to practice it, and it doesn't mean that we're gonna be perfect, and
right.
I just, I could do a we could do a whole entire series on what I believe, social media has ruined
Mm,
work in some ways by
mhm.
presenting this glamorous, shiny example of perfection. We have everything from the hustle hard and it'll
No,
all work out to
yeah,
even productivity gurus who tell us that there is a method and a system that allows you to do more. And it just is all that's
yeah,
not the way that it really is. Behind the scenes, there are failures, there are things that go wrong. No one is perfect. No one is perfect. Block out those voices. It helps to block out some of the incoming and focus in on how you do your work in your life. And I mean, I'm not saying that the tips are not sometimes good.
right.
Um, Hope that you have gotten some good tips from us here at Solo PR Pro and that Solo Life podcast. But life is not perfect and it's
Right.
not wrapped up in this neat and shiny bow. And so realize that on the journey to, getting better and doing better by yourself, that it's not always pretty.
No, no, I think we can close with that great productivity guru, William Shakespeare. "To thine own self be true. You know what pings right for you, and even if you've gotten away from that, you know how to get back to it." And really, that's I would say as we travel to this destination of are we there yet? Just remember that and keep that in mind, and You are all doing great, and we thank you for joining us for this episode. We're thrilled to be back. We miss talking to you guys. So until next time, thanks for joining us on That Solo Life.